Hey, small group leaders. I want to take a few moments to just share my heart with you. First of all, thanks for being leaders. It makes so much difference to have a solid bunch of small group leaders. In fact, if I had my choice, I would go among the whole church and I'd grab about 100 or 200 more and would have lots more groups. But thank you that you're sacrificing time, energy, and in fact, you're partnered with Jesus Christ in this whole thing of bringing the kingdom right here in Central Illinois. Now, let me talk a little bit about our message. This is an important one. I think this is a life-changing message. You know that little video clip I showed? And if you weren't there, for example, it's the video clip where the guy is struggling to explain what he learned on Easter Sunday to his neighbor. It's just hilarious. If you missed it, you can actually get a hold of the leaders, Thad or Dan. They could send you a copy of that. It is so good you might even want to show it to your group, because the Christian family cannot explain what they heard about Easter. I think that's probably something that would be true with all of us. I struggle. My wife said, well, what would you say? I said, well, I don't know. And I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth. But Easter is an amazing story. And if I were to ask most of you, you would say, well, it's something to do with sin. It's something to do with God forgave us. And that's true. It certainly is about our forgiveness. But it's way, way, way bigger than that. Let me explain. If you understand the Bible, Bill Jackson, one of our former pastors years ago, used to teach the Bible tells one story. In fact, he had a whole 10-week or 10-hour sessions on it. And the Bible is connected from Genesis to Revelation. And let me illustrate, and in fact, I brought this out in the message. The Passover story, the story of Israel being set free from Egypt with the blood on the doorpost and the angel, the death angel, and Pharaoh getting upset because he lost his firstborn, kicking him out, foreshadows the cross. Now, this is interesting because the Old Testament is said to be a type and a picture of everything that is going to happen anew. Now, a type isn't ever perfect. It's a picture. It gives you an illustration. But in the Passover, there was a lamb. At the cross, there was a lamb. Our lamb is Jesus, the Lord and Savior, Redeemer, the God-man. But here's where people miss it. Passover was about remembering a covenant he had made with Abraham. Abraham and he had a promise. Covenants, by the way, let me just illustrate for a second, are about how humans and God relate. Usually God sets them when they're between God and man, and they're covenants, they're promises. He promises he would take care of Israel. He told them they'd be there a certain number of years. Do you know they actually left Israel on the very night? So 400 some years before, he said, this day you'll be out of there. Pretty good. But now let's go to the New Testament. At the cross, remember Jesus the night before he goes to the cross says, a new covenant is coming. I'm drinking to a new covenant. So there's an old covenant, a new covenant. And what Jesus is launching at the cross is a brand new covenant. This covenant is absolutely stunning. It's amazing. It is so good you can't believe it. It includes the forgiveness of sins, but it includes the new birth and righteousness and grace and adoption as sons and daughters. And it brings us a whole new set of blessings and abundance. God's plan in the covenant is to restore us to our original design. That's a staggering statement. Now, let me challenge you just a second. I think most people could tell me more things about the old covenant than the new covenant. You see, Jesus lays it out, starts it. When he said it's finished, that's essentially the end of the old covenant and the beginning of the new. But what happens is Paul comes along and tells us more of the new covenant than maybe even Jesus did. That's a challenging thought. Ponder it. I don't have time to get into it, and this message wasn't about that. But if you will fall in love with what Jesus said we are, the covenant of grace versus the covenant of law, it'll transform everything. See, one of the things I want you to understand is that when you understand new covenant, you will become so excited, you'll be telling everybody. One of the things that I said was I want you to be able to, in the message, was you to be able to explain it. And if I were to explain to somebody what the whole thing of Easter, and when I say Easter, I mean all the day from the first week, the riding in on the donkey, we call that Palm Sunday, through to the First Supper or the Last Supper, then the idea of the death, the burial, the resurrection. That whole 7 days is what I call Easter. That whole thing, if you can explain it in covenant terms, it was the launching of a new covenant. See, Jesus came saying the kingdom's come, but the kingdom needed a new covenant for people to relate in a new way to God in this kingdom. So they all tie together, but it's so exciting. I tell people it's the best deal mankind ever got. And if you're not in, let me explain it to you. Let me share with you some of the things. In fact, come with me this weekend. We'll go over to the vineyard. We'll hear about it, and we'll see exactly what's going on Easter weekend as we culminate it with talking about his resurrection. So practice a little bit. Practice with your friend, a spouse, somebody that you're close with. Share a little bit. It needs to be simple. It needs to be understandable. But I want to challenge you. Do two things this week. Study the covenants a little bit. Ask yourself, what do I know about that new covenant? And just how good is it? I believe if you understand it, you'll fall in love with Jesus in a way that every day you'll wake up and it'll be bigger, better, and more beautiful than it was the day before. Second, go find a neighbor. Take one of the little cards we handed out. Go to a neighbor and say, hey, I have some really good news for you. Why don't you come with me this weekend? You'll hear part of it, and then I'll finish explaining it afterwards. Maybe get together for popcorn or go out for coffee or have them over for dinner or just a night of fun and fellowship. Small group leaders, once again, thanks for what you do. You're really the backbone of the pastoral care and implementation, discipleship of what we do, and your help is so valuable. Thanks, and God bless you.